Apollo's current market cap is dirt cheap based on what we already know in California. And as you guys alluded to, Cinco de Mayo is almost a bonus. That's all straight blue sky. I mean, no one's paying any attention to that right now. And if you guys pull it off to get the social license and all of a sudden you've got another great asset with great upside, I'm sure there are going to be people pay attention.
Fission went out for $1.1 billion. And while that might seem like an overnight success, it was 14 years in the making. And there are very few people that have hit the $1 billion club. And I've had a few great exits for shareholders, more to come, but I've never had $1 billion. Ross had a 1.1 billion exit, and he's in very small company. And so that's why we wanted to get Ross under our umbrella here and work with him. So I like where the asset is. I think it's a good opportunity right now. I don't think things could be better for us. And just the narrative over the last year has changed things significantly.
Now, you have, with the current resource there, which you're going to be doing some more exploration and drilling, it's quite possibly going to grow. But already you've got one of the largest existing silver resources in North America.
I think it's the largest
The single
undeveloped
largest.
primary silver deposit in the United States. The only operating or previously operating barite mine in the United States is about, I don't know, what is it, 10 miles? It's within 10 miles of our Waterloo project, or it's the last producing one. But as the U.S. made its bet on going out of the United States and its source for minerals and critical metals that they need, 95% of its barite came from other places, mostly China. So, we're in an area where it was produced before, it can be produced again, and that's our opportunity.
Land, but it isn't just land, it's land that's meaningful. The deposits are the Langtree and Waterloo silver deposits are, and of course the gold zone at Waterloo as well. It is a result of the Calico fault system. Now, this fault system basically runs from the northwest to the southeast, and the land package basically continues along that same trend. So importantly, we're following primary mineralized controlling feature there. That is the Calico fault system and the splays that come off of it. So it's strategically in the right direction along strike, along trend of what the controlling features are to the mineralization in the system. We already know there's historically there's a number of anomalies, surface anomalies, silver, some gold anomalies discovered on those claims. But it's our job right now to look at that historic numbers, compile it, and really go about the proper exploration process, doing more surface sampling, mapping, probably employ different geophysics scenarios in order to generate drill targets. We think we can make further discoveries of gold and silver that we see along this trend on the new ground. So we'll be making plans to get busy on that, for hopefully work this fall.
For disclosure purposes, our site does not make recommendations for purchases or sale of stocks, services, or products. Nothing on our site or this podcast should be construed as an offer or solicitation to buy or sell products or securities. All investing involves risk and possible losses. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please read all disclosures and disclaimers at the end of the show. For disclosure purposes, Apollo Silver is a paid-for client on the Investor Ideas website. For followers and listeners that might not have met everyone before, does everyone want to just do a quick intro? Chris, maybe we can start with you first and then move to Andy and then Ross.
Well, yeah, I'm Chris Temple, editor and publisher of the National Investor chiefly, and I've known Apollo Silver and Andy basically since the inception of the company, or prior to that, where Andy himself is concerned. But I followed Apollo since day one, and as we'll be discussing, it's he personally, and now Ross, his new CEO, really fit one of the important tests that someone like me has for any exploration company, and that is what I call my bet on the jockey test. And these two jockeys, this is not their first race. It's not their first rodeo. They both are very successful. And those are the kind of people you want to follow as an investor.
I'm Andy Bowering. I'm the chairman now of, well, always been the chairman of Apollo Silver. I started it 4.5 years ago, and I'm its largest shareholder. I've been in the space for a long time. I've had a few successful exits, and I like investing in what I do. I put my own money into these things, and so I feel like I'm one of the shareholders. And so I try and treat the company like, like it's like my money's at stake too. So I want to do what's best for the company. And
Ross McElroy, now the president and CEO of Apollo Silver. I've got a fairly lengthy background in the resource sector. I've been at it somewhere between 35 to 40 years. Yeah, I've seen all levels of work, from early stage grassroots to development through production, and and also building companies up and being able to sell them along the way. And I would like to echo Andy's sentiment too about having skin in the game. I think that's truly important as well. I'm also a shareholder of Apollo and intend to be, an ever increasing larger shareholders. We go along. I think it's very important to have management that also are shareholders, so all of our interests are aligned. So to me, that's a key part of the story as well.
So I'd love to start this off on some of the macros. I feel the podcast is the right time, the right place with silver the last couple weeks. Chris, do you want to give some commentary, and then Andy and Ross as well, on what you're seeing in silver and the commodities? And then I think next we'll talk about that betting on the jockeys, because I feel like we have some of the best jockeys in the room.
Sure. Well, silver had befuddled a lot of people for a while because we've had this moonshot in the gold price for so long now. We've peaked at over $3,500 an ounce. We're not that far from that level right now. But unlike gold, which is now working on, 80% higher than its 2011 peak, silver is still well off of its 2011 peak. And everyone's scratched their head trying to figure out, well, what's going on? What's happening? And finally, the stars were starting to align recently for silver. We saw a technical breakout on the chart once silver got above $35. I think the long-term fundamentals for silver, as with so many other metals, are extraordinarily bullish because, as with so many of them, you've got chronic supply shortfalls and deficits going forward as far as you want to see. Near term, silver may be a little bit more hostage still than gold is to macro worries, if we have a recession come about or something like that. But the good news for you, if you're investing in any commodity, and I don't want to get too far afield with this particular subject, but we just heard from the Federal Reserve this week that they have done all but announce in so many words that they are running up the white flag and will never meet their 2% inflation target. We were told by the Fed this week that they're still likely to lower interest rates a little bit in the near term, even though they're predicting inflation is going to rise anew. So that's bad for the dollar, and it's good for everything priced in U.S. dollars, including silver, along with all of silver's other attributes as an industrial metal and is a junior precious metal, which I think will more so as gold continues to rise, get dragged up and play some more catch up.
Ross and Andy, do you want to add your commentary in on what you're seeing on silver, as you have boots on the ground in your silver story?
Silver has a double role there. It's a precious metal, so it is somewhat tied to the price of gold. I mean, it's decoupled, but to a large degree. But it is making significant comeback, I guess, recently. I mean, if you just look even at the last 6 months, silver's been outperforming gold on the price. I mean, they're similar, but silver's up some 25%, gold about 20% on the year. But so perhaps that we'll call it a historic ratio is maybe on its way to rebalancing. But there is that. But I think that silver, as you were talking about, Chris, is really it's also an industrial mineral, and I think as we see, the whole global scenario changing, different forms of energy coming in, I think silver is going to play a key role in the new energy environment, globally speaking. So it's a key component. I think, I see I'm still very, very bullish on both precious metals, but I think silver has got a longer catch up to play. But so we're excited about the future.
Chris, I'm going to let you take the floor as your promise about talking about the best jockeys. So
I'll tell you, I want to, start with the relative newcomer, so Apollo, at least Ross. I followed very keenly for several months, Ross, when fishing was on the block, and you finally pulled off that sale to Paladin Energy. You had one of the best advanced exploration stories in the entire uranium space, and as Callie knows from the conversations I've had with her, I've been a uranium bull for as long as anybody and have a lot of happy people as a result. So congratulations belatedly to you for building up one of the best advanced exploration uranium projects and really all of this continent and selling it to Paladin as you did. So I know that Andy's a wise guy and he picks well with the company he keeps, and you're the latest example of that. Now that he's brought you in to run Apollo day to day, and going back to you, Andy, I've told people many times, as you know, that when you see a guy, folks, and those of you who are out there who invest in junior resource stocks in any way, shape, or form, you know that even with some of the moves that we've had, and more recently it's starting to broaden out in the metals and the commodities themselves, it's still been pretty difficult more often than not in recent years for junior companies to get traction, to get interest of investors, to get financing and things like that. And when you go back 4.5 years ago and look at an Andy Bowering, who has built up, as he said early on, a few different companies, Millennial Lithium, Prime Mining, others. He's been extremely successful and taken assets from nothing, putting them together and monetizing them and making everybody a lot of money. Here's a guy who, what was it, mid 2020, Andy, or late 2020?
Mid 2020.
Mid 2020, you've got COVID that just got unleashed on the world. That made a bad situation worse when junior stocks are concerned. And here's a guy who, on his name, starting a company could raise over $50 million to seed Apollo. You can count the fingers of one hand how many gentlemen there are in the mining industry on this continent who can do that. And Andy is one of them. And you're going to learn today about their two major projects. Of course, the one that you got off the ground with being Calico down in California, and then more recently Cinco de Mayo. So we're gonna unpackage both of those.
can we talk about Andy and Ross, your past success, and then how you're applying that to Apollo Silver going forward? Because I feel like, as Chris just said, how fantastic your track records are. And like with your two combined success, what do you both feel like you're bringing to the table with this moving forward?
Well, I'll let Ross speak for himself, but I just want to highlight that, Fission went out for $1.1 billion. And while that might seem like an overnight success, it was 14 years in the making. And there are very few people, very few, as Chris just said, a handful of people. There are very few people that have hit the $1 billion club. And I've had a few great exits for shareholders, more to come, but I've never had $1 billion. Ross had a 1.1 billion exit, and he's in very small company. And so that's why we wanted to get Ross under our umbrella here and work with him. So, sticks with a project, sees it through to the end, and then maximizes the value for all the shareholders. Like you just don't find people that will do that every day. There are very few. And so that's why Ross is here. I'm thrilled for that. I've had the pleasure of having some great partners and shareholders and supporters, Prime Mining, Pierre Lassonde, turned out to end up being the largest shareholder. And, Prime is a fabulous company. There's great things going on with it. And, started like a 10 million market cap and, north of 300 million now. And I suspect it trades better. Millennial Lithium had a guy named Ian Scar, a 25-year exploration and development game. And we built an asset, or bought a cheap asset and built it around him, and ended up selling that for like $480 million to the benefit of all the shareholders. So to me, it's the people, it's the people, it's the people. You need three things in this business. We need four, really. You need a good management, a good asset, a good management team, a good shareholder list, good supporters, and then you need a bit of luck. And you can make it with two or three of those things, but if you get a bad management team, man, they'll wreck a good project. They'll miss the timing. Stuff will go bad. So first and foremost, it's the jockey. And and so yeah, I'm thrilled to be with Ross here on Apollo, and we'll get to talking about that. That's enough from me.
Look, I appreciate all that, Andy. And the feeling's exactly the same for me. I think a lot of it is really based on people. I've seen a lot of very good projects and poor management, and the story goes nowhere. You do need people behind these. Good assets, they take, there's a little bit of luck involved there. There's skill. But it's at the end of the day, it's the solid people, and I look at also with the track record of the company that I'm coming in, and the people behind it. Andy, of course, driving the success. That is exactly what I like to combine my skill set with. I've had fairly lengthy tenures with major mining companies. Thinking of BHP. On the precious metals on the gold side, and in their diamond division for a number of years. I've been on a lot of projects where we've made the initial discovery and seen several of them through to production. So I feel that, something I've got background and experience in, it is building companies, moving assets along, getting them developed. As long as they're good, worthy assets that can be developed, I really see, the joy in building a company and really building the shareholder value that way. That's been a good part of my history, and that's exactly the story I see here at Apollo. And we've got tremendous assets in the company. They're not at initial stages. Calico's advanced. It has a very good, healthy deposit in there. It's very well delineated and drilled, primarily measured and indicated. And that's something that I think with the increasing silver prices as we're going, and the belief that silver prices will continue to be strong, this to me is an asset that absolutely can move down that food chain, from getting, the next level of economic assessment and bringing it ultimately to production. So I feel my strength, or what I can contribute, is really as a company builder, and getting building shareholder value in continuing to develop this asset and take it as far along as we can.
So we've had some news since the podcast first initially with Andy and myself, and since Chris and Andy had a podcast a couple months ago, I think. Now that you have the land acquisition that you've built out for Calico, let's get into a conversation about Calico. Chris, I think you had some questions, so again, I'll let you take the floor and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to highlight for people from both Andy and Ross the fact that the Calico Project, though it is in California, and some people will see that first description and say, oh boy, who does mining in California? But you're in a part of the state where there is significant mining, not only historically, but present day with Equinox and others, right?
San Bernardino has 90 some odd operating mines. Now,
Yep.
many of those are quarries, but plus 90 operating mines in the county. It's an area where as you mentioned, our Calico project is sandwiched is a pretty wide space, but between Equinox's Castle Mountain on the east and Rio Tinto's borax mine to the west. So, yep, an area where you can operate. And the one thing I'd like to mention is that what I like is that we're in a perfect, I think a perfect storm for U.S. assets. The narrative that's right now, the difficulties with the U.S. and Mexico could end up leading to much more difficult situation for Mexican silver producers. And I think that you're going to see a lot more investment come back into the United States in the silver space as a consequence of that. And maybe into the future past that will bode well for us with respect to our permitting and financing requirements and things like that. So I like where the asset is. I think it's a good opportunity right now. I don't think things could be better for us. And the narrative over the last year has changed things significantly.
Now, you have with the current resource there, which you're going to be doing some more exploration and drilling, it's quite possibly going to grow. But already you've got one of the largest existing silver resources in North America.
I think it's the largest
The single
undeveloped
largest.
primary silver deposit in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely a significant asset there. As I say, I think there's, it allows us with the new land package that we've added to Calico, essentially tripling the size of the project. That gives us not only the well drilled delineated ounces of silver that we've talked about. With a global number there of over 160 million ounces, but importantly, most of it at measured and indicated, and a third of it of inferred. On the near-term horizon, we'll be updating the resource at Waterloo with a barite inclusion in the resource estimate. That has some significance as well. Maybe some economic increases with that, but I think even more so is probably on a political side of the equation, in that I think it will assist with our permitting requirements. Having barite is an identified critical mineral. The U.S. is absolutely on the path for independence on critical minerals, and barite just happens to be one of those. And then plus, as I say, with the addition of new land there, that gives us blue sky on the exploration front. So, we can be busy at a multiple, level of work at Calico as we continue onwards, both exploring and advancing the silver assets itself through the economic paces.
Well, I want to pick up on that barite angle, guys, and Callie, because this is something that a lot of people don't hear a lot about. People who are following the mining space at all, you hear about antimony recently. There's, of course, a high-profile story with Perpetual Resources resurrecting what had been a whole hum gold story, but all of a sudden they got antimony with it, and now everybody's been all over it, including the federal government. Barite is a key, and as you pointed out, Ross, critical mineral, is defined by the government, which we produce none of today in the U.S. And it's hugely important because, among other things, it's used for drilling mud. It's needed in the energy industry as that kind of a product and a lubricant. Without it, as we're finding out on so many things, antimony, rare earth elements, and others, we're in a lot of trouble if we don't start resurrecting some domestic production.
Well, there is that, and the motto in the U.S. is certainly in the current administration is "drill, baby, drill." Well, in order to do that, you must have barite as part of the drill mud, we'll say. So it is a critical mineral, and it needs to be developed. And we have, we'll see what we have in the when we come up with a new resource estimate later this summer. Well, sometime in Q3, we'll call it. But I think it does lead itself to an interesting twist in the story.
The only operating or previously operating barite mine in the United States is about, I don't know, what is it, 10 miles? It's within 10 miles of our Waterloo project. So,
Wow.
and it quit production in the 50s, or its last producing one, but as the U.S. made its bet on going out of the United States and its source for minerals and critical metals that they need. You know, about 95% of its barite came from other places, mostly China. So, you know, we're in an area where it was produced before, it can be produced again, and that's our opportunity.
I tell people all the time that it wasn't just sneakers and t-shirts and Christmas toys that we outsourced to all the other countries. It's all these other things we need.
It's everything, right?
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit more in depth for investors or followers that missed the press release about your land package and then the potential of the exploration and where that is situated compared to the original like flagship drilling results near Calico?
Yeah, so essentially what we've done is add on, as I say, with the new land basically triples the size of what used to be Calico. So, you know, is a sizable increase in land, but it isn't just land. It's land that's meaningful. The controlling feature of why the deposits are the Langtree and Waterloo silver deposits are, and of course the gold zone at Waterloo as well, it is a result of the Calico fault system. Now, this fault system basically runs from the northwest to the southeast, and the land package basically continues along that same trend. So, importantly, we're following the mineralized primary mineralized controlling feature there. That is the Calico fault system and the splays that come off of it. So that's where the land is actually part of. So that does, you know, make it significant. It isn't just building for the sake of having a greater area, you know, land area, but it's strategically in the right direction along strike, along trend of what the controlling features are to the mineralization in the system. That to me gives us, the opportunity. We already know there's historically there's a number of anomalies, surface anomalies, silver, some gold anomalies discovered on those claims. But it's our job right now to, you know, look at that historic numbers, compile it, and really go about the proper exploration process, doing more surface sampling, mapping, probably employ different geophysics scenarios in order to generate drill targets. We think we can make further discoveries of gold and silver that we see along this trend on the new ground. So, you know, we'll be making plans to get busy on that, for hopefully work this fall. So after the resource update, we're going to be looking to be busy on the ground at Calico sometime this fall, and moving on towards the latter part of this calendar year.
We'll move on to Cinco de Mayo, but just one real quick thing, Ross. You mentioned gold somewhat in passing, but correct me if I'm wrong. Is there a small amount of gold that already was starting to emerge as part of the overall silver equivalent resource that you were already starting to flesh out even before this new ground?
Yeah. So at the in the Waterloo silver deposit, I guess it'd be the southeast end of it. There's a unique, discrete gold zone down there. It does show up in our resource estimate. There's about 70,000 ounces of gold. So at this stage, that's not a huge amount, but it does have the potential to grow. Now, we have done some work, some mapping, some sampling in and around this area. That was done earlier this winter, in the springtime. And that was part of an announcement as well when we talked about adding on the new land package and claims. We talked about some of that work that we did there, and it also highlighted anomalous samples, gave us some new targets that we should be able to drill. And so I think that there is the opportunity to expand on the gold resource as well as silver.
I'd like to say that this company has done 2 deals with what I'll say is mid-tiers to majors in the precious metal space, or the silver space in particular. We've done 2 deals, both of them with much bigger companies, number one. Number two, both of them have some sort of gold credit to them, and both of them have new discovery potential. So both assets, when you look at them, are pretty exciting. Anyway, maybe that was a little bit out of place, but I want to highlight that point.
I like that added comment, Andy. So I think the next step is to talk about Cinco de Mayo. Since again, the podcast where we last spoke, Andy, Pan American Mag Silver acquisition. There's been a lot of momentum on the Mexican silver plays. I think Go Gold, Heliostar, and a few of them are all near their 52-week high or even higher, if I'm correct on a few of those numbers. But Chris, do you want to start off the conversation, or I'm giving the floor to whoever feels wants to talk about this first?
Well, let me just open the door real quick and then let these guys take it from there. You know, we said at the outset that a key consideration is to glom on to management that has a track record and has the ability to raise money, et cetera. And this, I think, has the potential to be another key attribute of the type of management and stories that you want to attach yourself to, folks, because sometimes, for various reasons, even larger companies hit a wall. They ran into development issues. They didn't understand the geology and metallurgy correctly or whatever. And there are many times I have seen fresh sets of eyes, fresh amounts of money come in to some of these things. And that really, I think, is going to be the evolving story of Cinco de Mayo. This is an incredible asset, an opportunity that you grabbed onto. And importantly, Andy, and I think this is a good way to begin a discussion from a guy, you know, with Prime Mining, for the biggest example, you already know how things operate in Mexico and you're already respected down there. And that was a big door opener.
Prime's a good example. There's, I don't know, 20 some odd employees, Mexican employees of Prime, that are all from Chihuahua City in Chihuahua, which is 2 hours away from Cinco de Mayo. And another parallel, Prime, the asset in Prime, Guadalupe de los Reyes, was owned by another public company. They had issues. They had advisors telling them they weren't going to be able to fix social problems. And so they chose to focus on something else. And good for them. They developed the other thing they were focusing on, but enabled us to buy that asset from them for what they had into it, $9 million. And, you know, right now you've got a 300+ million market cap company with 30 something million in the treasury, and based on that asset. And there was a lot of juice left in the orange, I guess, to squeeze, I would say, when we got it. And much like that, Apollo parallels that with Cinco. Cinco is I mean, you get the value in Apollo for the assets in California. You've got 110 measured and indicated, another 50 million inferred, and then that kind of underwrites the value of the company. And then you've got this asymmetric risk profile where we didn't pay anything up front for Cinco de Mayo, which is the historic resource on it's 150+ million silver equivalent ounces. And there was a brand new discovery on it when things went bad. Anyway, we got that for a future payment of a 19.9% stake in our company, if and when we can fix the problems there. And the street, and I'm talking the bankers, the mine finance houses, the people that know our industry well, will tell you that Cinco can be $1 billion deal. It's the size of the prize is that big. It's just, you know, can we fix the problems like we've done at other places in Mexico and other places around the world? And so that's the opportunity for us as shareholders here, is that we get another asset like our California assets that's worth a ton of value if we can solve the problem. And we're not asking shareholders to pay much money up front for that. In fact, we only pay $600,000 annually, US, is about the cost to maintain that 5-year option we have to fix the problems.
We know what a significant asset it was for Mag Silver at the time. You know, I think a good part of their market cap back at the time that they were working at, you know, in 2010 to 12. You know, Cinco was a top priority asset for them, and there hasn't been any work on it, you know, ever since. So, it has a historic resource on it that's really quite significant. Very, very strong, high grade. It's, essentially you end up with over 50 million ounces of silver. In the historic numbers, you've got almost 1.8 billion pounds of zinc. It's a very zinc rich silver asset. Wide open. There's a lot of work to be done on it. I think the exciting story there is the discovery of Pegaso, which is deeper down and slightly in a different place. It would be a brand new zone down there. And there's one hole in there right now that has significant mineralization. So that's obviously, a place we would want to focus on right away, to continue to build. Andy had mentioned the gold asset. There is a gold asset there called Pozo Seco that's about 4 kilometers to the east of the silver zinc deposit. And that one, maybe it's not the highest priority right now. It would probably be focusing on Pegaso and seeing what that zone's all about. But the first steps here, obviously, is to get social license to get back on the ground. And that is something that we are working very, very hard and diligently in the background to, build up that trust with the communities and let them know that there's a new team in place, new management, new group. We'll see what can be done, but the prize is absolutely tremendous, and obviously that isn't reflected in our in the share price of Apollo at this point. And that's understandable, but if we get that social license to get back on the ground, that is a tremendous upside for the company.
There's our country manager and a couple of the other things we do in Mexico, in addition to Apollo, is right there. He's 2 hours away, and we've got friends in the community. And so the opportunity's there. We just have to fix a few things.
Yeah, and Andy, you've explained this to me before, but I want you to do it again because I won't get it right as you will. There was recently a new, is it an area manager?
Yeah, there's a new APGO executive, and APGOs are communal groups that have been granted surface rights by the federal government of Mexico. And so if you want to get on the surface to do exploration, you need their approval. Recall MAG lost social license, the right to be on the property, in 2012. And they lost it for a variety of different reasons. Some were their doing, some were just the times, and time generally heals most wounds, and then, to use another stupid cliche, the second mouse gets the cheese. And MAG couldn't fix their problems there, and so we came in 13 years later, and we have an honest, good shot at fixing the problems that are there for two reasons. On a macro level, the U.S. is exporting a lot of unemployed Mexicans back to Mexico. For the last 30 or 40 years, I don't know, maybe longer, but people have left Mexico to go up to the United States, legally, illegally, but they work and they send money back to their families in Mexico. And so instead of having money being sent back to Mexico, it's compounded, it's worse. You've got unemployed people going back. And given that probably close to 30% of the northern economy of Mexico is indirectly related to mining, and probably directly it's about 10 to 15%, there's a real problem. And you've also had the Mexican government say, we're banning open pits, blah, blah, blah. We're not permitting these things, that water's an issue for the community. So you've got a real struggle. And the disparity between communities that are situated close to operating mines and those that aren't is very stark. You can just see the difference in wealth in the people. And so that macro level is creating a real opportunity for the people around Cinco de Mayo. And there's about 10,000 people in the community, and they've got no industry. They're in trouble. And I can go on and on about the assembly plants that are closing because the US isn't looking for the small appliances anymore. and how difficult the agricultural business has been because the US put a tariff on pecans, and it goes on and on. They need our investment in mineral exploration and mine development. And so that helps us. And then on a micro level, right down in the community, they don't have jobs. There's issues. There's no support industries. Like a group like ours comes in and we make investments in infrastructure. We help the schools. We fix buildings. We do a lot of things. But aside from all of that, direct investment into the community, we'll spend 20 million plus annually on mineral exploration, drilling and advancing, and the spin-offs on that are crazy. And that's what they need.
As far as for investors that are looking to mitigate their risk, just to clarify, you will not be open pit. It's all underground for Cinco de Mayo as well.
The primary resource that you've got, the Jose Manto deposit, is a few hundred meters below surface. Yes, that would be an underground mine, and plus the Pegaso zone, of which we only really know by one hole. I already talked about that a little bit. That's even deeper again. So yes, you're talking about an underground mining operation there.
And that fits the narrative of the Mexican government right now. Now they're talking about maybe permitting some open pits just because they realize how difficult the situation they're in. There's like the foreign investment has dropped right off since they said we're banning all open pit mining, and they need it. But Cinco fits that narrative just perfectly.
There's obviously a narrative happening behind the scenes, especially with Chihuahua, Mexico, again, mentioning those 52-week highs with gold, Heliostar. There's permits that keep coming through. So I feel like, again, right time, right place as you guys move this project forward.
I look at our market cap, it's up 100 million plus or minus. And, fabulous management team. Lots of cash in the bank, great share registry. Like we got some really good shareholders, and as we started this conversation off, the narrative's changing in the U.S. You got U.S. and Mexico. Man, I don't know. I think we got a tiger by the tail here.
I agree. And real quick before we wind this up, you guys, can you give us some specifics of like next steps and hopefully last steps to get that social license around Cinco de Mayo? What do the locals want to see? What do you have to promise them, etc.?
Well, we've never actually made a broad scale proposal to the entire community, and I think that you might start to see more of that. But we're negotiating right now. We're talking with the local APGO executive to hold a general council meeting and invite all the members of the APGO and the members of the community to hear our presentation. And, we do know that there is a agricultural lobby that is still, and keep in mind, northern Mexico is a pretty dry area, unless you're right in the Sierra Madres where there's, a lot of precipitation. Northern Mexico is a dry area. And so justifiably, farmers are going to have concern over a mining operation and a mineral exploration operation that comes in and wants to use a lot of the water. But concerns are not well founded. And Silvercrest was able to prove that to them, and spent a bunch of money on a study and gave them a plan to how to irrigate their crops with pipes instead of open ditches where 50% of the water's evaporated off. And they made an investment into the farming irrigation system. And as a consequence of that, in their area, the farmers now get 2 crops a year instead of the one they were getting before.
And they got their mining operation.
So a lot of it's, not well founded. But you can understand their concerns, and those are the things that we're working on right now to resolve. And then the only thing I didn't bring up is that back in the day, Mag was accused of assassinating 2 people, and a couple people that were from the farming community were murdered, and I wasn't there at the time. I don't know exactly why or what, but the police and federal prosecuting unit or whatever it is confirmed that drug dealer cartel person who was killed by the federal police in 2015 was in possession of the gun that murdered the two people. And so it fit the story that they were dealing with some shady operators, and that's what got them in trouble. Wrong place, wrong time. Mineral explorers. I mean, look at us. We're mineral explorers and mine developers. We're not murderers and assassins, and we don't do stuff like that. And none of the people at MAG do that. They're a good operating company. But whatever, they got accused of it. And that stuck with them. It's people like us and groups like ours that come in and 13 years later you can change that narrative, and that's what we're doing. Just takes a little bit of time.
Chris, you always say, does the math make sense? So does Apollo Silver's math make sense with the projects and the jockeys? I feel it does, but I'd love to hear from you as an expert.
Well, I always say let's do the math, whether it's politics, whether it's we're talking about our budget fight here in the US and taxes and all that kind of stuff. And it's true when you're looking at a exploration project and potential development story. And in short, Apollo's current market cap is dirt cheap based on what we already know in California. And as you guys alluded to, Cinco de Mayo is almost a bonus. That's all straight blue sky. I mean, no one's paying any attention to that right now. And if you guys pull it off to get the social license and all of a sudden you've got another great asset with great upside, I'm sure there are going to be people pay attention. But even if you didn't have that, the Calico story all by itself is compelling enough. And there are people starting to pay attention. I mean, your share price is almost triple recently from its low a year ago. And that still doesn't reflect, I think, what it's worth. So, folks, a lot of junior companies, advanced exploration companies are still out there that have not responded yet to this metals move. Apollo has started, but in my opinion, this is still very, very early in the game. I think there's still a lot of runway here.